Happy summer solstice. Today's June 21st, and it's the summer solstice, which means we have 16 hours of daylight, which is pretty nice. Sunrise is at 5 a.m. and sets at 9 p.m., which is really nice to have our longest day of the year. And today I wanted to talk about resiliency in the terms of Dharma practice and in terms of climate change. On Friday, or last Saturday, I had the opportunity to go to a little local talk on climate change by an atmospheric scientist who had worked for the Air Force for her career. And she had a lot of different facts about climate change. I mean, she was kind of talking to the people who already agreed with climate change, but it was, again, just a very good reminder to see our reality of what's happening, and again, to be reminded of how vital it is that we continue to act and to not get depressed or discouraged or daunted by it, because it is quite daunting, but we have to keep acting. We can't just ignore it. It's interesting, she shared several little facts that I'll just give a couple, but 72% of Americans actually believe in climate change, that we recognize that it's happening. And so it's not a question of whether it's happening or not, but everybody sees it. We just need to actually keep acting on it. And the last 10 hottest years ever recorded in history have been since 2010. And the most severe storms, costing over $1 billion, have also happened within the last 20 years. And I mean, it would probably be astounding to add up the numbers of how much the damage costs from those storms caused by climate change, and think, if we had taken that money and used it to invest in technology and things to prevent the storms from happening, we would have been a lot more farther along in actually addressing this problem, rather than waiting for things to get bad and then reacting. Another fact, that she had this chart showing CO2 levels, and for the past 800,000 years, the CO2 level has been pretty steady at 300 parts per million, kind of a fairly stable line, little bumps and things. But in 1950, that line just started going up so sharply. And scientists many times said that there's a tipping point at 360 parts per million, and that's when we'll start seeing the ice sheets melting and ocean levels rising dramatically. And right now we're at 400. We've already passed that point, and it's continuing to go up. And scientists are seeing the currents slowing down, which means some parts of Europe are actually going to get colder. And it's yeah. She showed one picture of the icebergs melting, or the ice sheets melting, and it's not just a drip, it's waterfalls all over the place. And she said, with climate change, it's not just the warming temperatures, which we're already seeing, but drought is going to be the #1 problem. Widespread drought, which means widespread famine, and a lot of repercussions from that. So at the end of the talk, I was slightly disappointed because it was all these depressing facts that I already knew about, and I was waiting for that golden answer of what can we do, and that didn't really happen. It was kind of like things I've been hearing since I was a kid, of recycle and turn off the lights and all these little things. So I was slightly frustrated at the end of the talk, but the more I thought about it, I was like, but that does matter. I mean, it's the ripple effect. If each one of us actually did that, it would have a big impact. Ever since I was a kid, I've been wanting to figure out how to really help and to not cause harm. And when I decided to be a wildlife biologist, and some of my first jobs were actually killing animals. My first job at Priest Lake was killing fish, introduced species of fish that was outcompeting other fish species. And so we were killing them to try to recover this threatened fish species. Unfortunately, 16 years ago, I came to Young Adult Week and was talking to Venerable Shodron and asked, so is killing these fish that we're trying to remove actually harmful, even though I'm trying to help these other species? And she clearly said, yes, any kind of killing is not helpful. So that's still a question that I continue to reflect on, is like how to truly help and how to not cause harm. I mean, that's a huge reason of why I ordained, because what I was trying to do, help save the world with wildlife and the environment, wasn't working. One simple phrase that it's kind of, I think we've all heard it, can be easy to dismiss, but it's also so true. It's think global, act local. And it's, again, I mean, that's, in a way, that's also our Buddhist worldview, is think big, very big, and then take responsibility for the actions that are happening right in this moment. That each little thing does matter. So again, if we all conserved water, if we all conserved electricity and fuel, those actions add up. In looking at my mind, I've seen that I so deeply want things to just be easy and pleasant, for things to be convenient. And I mean, that's definitely our American lifestyle, is we're kind of taught that things should be easy and convenient. And that's a huge reason why we're one of the largest contributors of CO2. The US we only represent 5% of the world's population, but we produce 25% of the CO2. And yeah, so we have a big part. We might think we're just little fish in the sea, but we make a lot of CO2, each person. I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with our public transportation, our lack of public transportation, and that kind of stubborn independence of doing what I want when I want it and getting what I want when I want it. I mean, Amazon has certainly not helped. You just click a button online, buy whatever you want, and it would be so interesting to find out the carbon cost of buying a flaming pig lighter from Amazon, sorry, and seeing, how much was that actual carbon footprint. It's so easy to do, and we do it all the time, but we don't realize the impact of that, of our actions. In thinking about climate change, I was thinking about how it completely connects with the 4 characteristics of karma. Karma is definite. Creating CO2 warms the earth. Karma expands, that it's a ripple effect. That little bit of CO2 released has massive repercussions as far as, changing our weather patterns and instability across the world. But it also has positive repercussions, that if we act, one person can make a difference. Think of Greta Thunberg, for example. One person, through her actions of speaking up, has made a huge difference. The third characteristic of karma is that if you don't create the cause, then you don't get the result. And so if we don't act, it's only going to get worse. Ignoring it doesn't really stop it. Continuing to feed the doubt that we have. I think it's really convenient to be like, well, I don't know if this actually helps or if it hurts, and I heard this conflicting information. That's kind of an excuse for our laziness to just not do anything. If you actually look online, there's a lot of really good, clear, factual information about what's happening and what helps. And number 4 is that the action is not lost, that the CO2 is not going to disappear, but that each action really does matter. For example, just flying 1 mile in an airplane emits 53 pounds of CO2, and that there's 100,000 flights on average per day in the US. So if you think about that ripple effect, each time we're flying emits a lot of CO2. On average, each gallon of gas produces about 20 pounds of CO2. And with 200 million licensed drivers in the US, that also adds up. And even though we have these systems in place that seem like, well, I have to be able to drive to get groceries and we have to be able to fly, we can also make actions to correct kind of our harm that we're causing. That there's really good organizations that you can kind of invest money in to capture carbon, especially with landfills. They're able to capture all the methane and CO2 that's released just from the breakdown process of landfills. So we can help investing in different technologies that can help offset the carbon. There's one company called TerraPass that has just projects all over the world that they're connecting with, and it's really easy to calculate how much CO2 you're producing and then be able to make an offering to try to offset that. So there are a lot of ways we can help. I mean, it can be quite daunting, but climate change is daunting, but so is samsara. I mean, that's where we're at. So Buddha taught cause and effect, but he also taught the end of dukkha. And a huge part of that is our ethical conduct, is not causing that harm. And one of the ways that the Buddha first started teaching was in establishing precepts, that we weren't really good at not causing harm on our own, that having the precepts and knowing what is clearly harmful and what is clearly helpful is a huge part of what the Buddha taught. And so I really think actually having some of our restraints of having carbon taxes and penalties for the harm that we're causing is also incredibly important, that we have to actually pay the true cost of what our actions are. Because we know the causes for climate change, and we have to just reduce the fossil fuel. Electric cars aren't perfect, but they produce half the amount of CO2 that regular cars do. So we have to continue to use our wisdom and intelligence to really find the truth of things. And in Dharma practice, I mean, the self-centered thought is our number one enemy. And we can also see that that's the same with addressing climate change, that it's the laziness and self-centeredness and greed that is the cause. And so in both aspects, we can work on addressing that and seeing that we are responsible for our own actions. And also, I mean, the Buddha had his integrity and wisdom and the power of role models showing us the path that it is possible makes a huge difference. So if each one of us holds that integrity and steps up and holds an awareness of our actions and is that model, that has a ripple effect in other people seeing that as well. There's ecosystem resiliency, which is a term of just kind of showing the balance of how the ecosystem kind of balances itself out and restores itself based on different qualities and factors. And a huge part of that is the diversity in nature. And we can see that also in our Dharma practice, that the importance of diversity, that having diversity of different traditions working with each other, diversity in our practices, and diversity in the teachings is really important in understanding and navigating different things that arise. The definition of resiliency is the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. And that's what we're doing in our Dharma practice, is working with our minds to overcome any difficulties. And that's what we can do for also addressing climate change, is having that creativity and diversity and determination to get out of samsara and to end climate change, so that we can keep thinking bigger and working one step at a time. We're doing our best to not cause harm and to be of benefit and to truly be of greatest benefit to all sentient beings.